Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Love Fruit podcast. And if you would like to subscribe and get more notifications about future podcasts, you can go to fruitfest.co.uk and sign up for a newsletter there if you like. And thank you for the support. Today we have a great interview I'm looking forward to a lot with Kat Brodycz, also known as Soulfully Kat on Instagram. And originally from the US. I met Kat at the Canada Fruit Festival and heard her amazing story of how she actually healed from thyroid cancer. And I think that that's so interesting because you don't hear a lot of people, there's not so many stories of people that heal from cancer and things like that get out there that much. So I thought it would be great to interview her. She's also makes gemstone jewellery. She has a page on Instagram there, inara.elements. So you might want to check that out as well. And she's also a mother. That's right. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So that as well on top of everything else. Kat, is there anything else you want to say in introduction to yourself?
No, I think you covered it all. I'm a jewelry artist. I live here in Bali. I'm a single mom to Inara, which I named my jewelry company after her. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Very cool. So if we start off, I mean, as I say, I think it's quite rare for people to, because what was rare about the conversation I had with you in terms of your story with cancer was, from my perspective, what I've seen is very few people have healed cancer without the combination of kind of surgery and chemo and then also lifestyle as well. Like a lot of people do both, but it seemed like you'd maybe managed to catch it early or whatever it was, and you dealt with it just through a more natural route, which might not work for everyone, of course, but it's interesting to hear your side of it. But I guess what I'd like to ask first is, in terms of your lifestyle growing up, what was that like? Were you on a conventional diet and things like that, or how did it look?
100%. Although the one thing I did do is I went vegetarian when I was 8. So I knew as a small child there was something wrong with eating animals. So I was in a conventional diet of like fast food, but I didn't consume animals at all since I was 8 years old, because we were so poor. We were so poor growing up that my mom cooked chicken every single day. And I remember looking at the chicken and I saw that it had veins and arteries. And I remember looking at it and I was like, that thing was alive, and it creeped me out. So I was such a small child and like that's all that we could afford. So like just seeing that, I don't know why I made the connection really early on. And then also too, my stepdad had a farm where they farmed animals. So when the animals went missing, I understood that the animals went missing to be killed. And I was like 9 when she got married, and just, yeah, it was really easy for me to understand the connection.
Did you have any?
I still eat fast food.
Did you have any health issues at all growing up?
No, actually, I was pretty good. I was always really strong. I had a lot of maybe anxiety and some mental stress issues because I grew up in a very, well, after age 11, I actually was a foster child. I was taken away from my family because it was a very unhealthy and very terrible home living situation. So it's no wonder that I got thyroid cancer, because cancer is an emotional blockage. And for me, it was my voice, that I was really not able to speak and hold my own space and be comfortable with that. So it's no wonder that that's where it developed for me. But I grew up very stressed. A lot of different things were going on that were, it makes sense how I ended up with an illness.
So you felt like you weren't able to communicate growing up?
100%. I was a foster child. I went to 13 different schools in 5 years.
Oh my God.
I bounced from home to home to home to home. And the thing is that as a foster child in Chicago, which is a mixed culture of different colors, different races, different everybody, white people don't want foster kids. So I grew up with every other color, anything that you can imagine. And it was amazing because it allowed me now to get along with anybody. Like, I am so I wanted to travel. I wanted to understand the people that I was exposed to early on. It was the most beautiful thing that happened to me. But at that time as a child, you feel really alone when you're looking at everyone else and you can't relate to them because they're so different than you.
When you say foster homes, do you mean like what is that like? My imagination of a foster home is like a family that takes in, adopts a child or adopts a couple of kids. Is that what you're
But we're
talking about, or was it like an actual home with like like hundreds of kids in it, or?
multiple homes. So every movie that you've seen, like there's a movie called Antoine Fisher, if anyone knows it, it's a really screwed up movie. I felt that. White Oleander is another movie about foster kids. That was more my lifestyle. So we think of these nice homes where people are really good to you, but it's not. I grew up in Chicago where the foster homes were actually really awful, because a lot of times these people take foster kids in because they want the check, and then they're cashing their foster care checks to get cars and other things. I remember one lady, she had 5 or 7 of us or something, and she never ever gave us money. We could never even eat. There was never any food in the house. It was an abusive house. It was really terrible. So I was in situations like that, which forced me to always run away. So I was a runaway. I was a runner. I would run from every place they stuck me in. I was just like, screw this, I'm out. And I would run away. And I would basically like live in the streets. I was just like, I'm not going back to this place. These people are beating me. These people are doing whatever. And I would run away. So then they ended up sticking me in group homes. And I ended up in like several different group homes, and every group home they put me in, I would just run away from it. And then finally they stuck me in a place I couldn't run away from, in the middle of nowhere. And then I was just stuck. And yeah. And I'm turning 14 at that time anyway. So
So
it slowed me down.
a lot of people that are, I mean, I've heard a lot of stories of people in those kind of situations, and they struggle to really get their life together. You know, it's like to be so
100%.
unstable like that growing up.
Yeah.
Did you ever go towards like the drugs, the alcohol, stuff
100%.
like that?
1000%. And actually, yeah, definitely. And most people I knew that even were in these homes, a lot of them ended up killing themselves or drug addicts or whatever. But I went through this thing where I went through phases of, and it's weird because I never did drugs to escape. I did it to feel love. I was like on ecstasy, and I really loved feeling love for the first time
Right,
because I never really got that. So
right.
I did a lot of ecstasy growing up, and I loved the community that I was in when I did it. I was around these people and we were just like, it was nice, at the time. But it was weird because I never wanted to be so out of myself, because I was also assaulted really young. I was assaulted at 11 years old. So
Mm,
I didn't trust letting go of my physical body enough to be,
yes.
screwed up. So I always stayed embodied, but I allowed myself to be at a point where I was really having fun. But most people, if you would have saw me, it was rare that someone goes, "Oh, she's screwed up on drugs." So I think because of the trauma that I was exposed to, I can never disconnect, and I never ever did like a hard drug like people do heroin and like weird crazy stuff like crack. No,
Mm,
that is
yeah.
that is something else. That's a weird different thing, because my mother did love me when I was a kid, and I grew up very loved by my mother, but my stepfather was abusive. I had a very loving home early on, so I knew what love was. So I was never like, I always had something to remember to ground me where I wouldn't disconnect so far. Like kids that grow up and they're never loved in their home, I think they're more likely to do really hard drugs.
Why did you leave your family home? Were you
My stepdad was abusive,
all right,
and
so
my
you ran away?
he turned yeah, well, he was really abusive, and he turned to my mom one day and he says, "Listen, either you get rid of her or I'm leaving." And my mom was a single mom of 5 kids at that as a single 5 kids and 2 with him. And she looked at me and she said, "Kathleen, you have to go because I'm afraid he's going to kill you."
Oh my God.
Because he would beat me that bad. So then I went with my aunt and then my grandmother, and my family comes from a family. My mom's cool as hell now, and my family has healed a lot of this. But at this time, I'll say like my grandfather, it's just definitely like generational trauma. A lot of it in my family, a lot of really screwed up situations. So my grandma was screwed up, my aunt was screwed up,
Mm,
and I ended up being bounced around a lot between my family, that I ended up with my grandfather, who was the coolest man ever. He just died last year. He was very grounding and very caring, but he traveled all over the world. So when he went to leave to travel one time, I got stuck with my father, and my father was a drug addict at this time. He was addicted to crack cocaine, and he had beat me so bad that the government came and took me. So then I ended up in the system
Oh God.
because of it. Yeah, so it
Wow.
was like bouncing around, and then I ended up with my father's side, and then my grandfather was really cool, most stable home I had as a child. But then my father got me, and when my father got me, that was when it was bad. It
And
was really bad.
were you able to go to school much? Like, did you get through that, or?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was actually, you know, it's funny. I was a straight A student. I actually graduated high school when I was 16 years old because I thought if I got good enough grades, my mother would take me back and love me again.
Oh my
So
God.
I skipped 2 grades. I started early and then I skipped a grade in high school. I was known, I had such a high IQ growing up that I think because of my intelligence, that was another thing that kept me grounded. And also too, like I said, my mother loved me growing up, but things shifted, you know? And I literally thought my mom, every time I talked to her, she would always brag about how smart I was.
Yeah.
So I just kept thinking like if I did really good in school, she would love me and she would take me back. But it never happened. But I did get really good grades and I ended up graduating even a year early in high school. Despite going to I was actually in newspapers where the foster care agency, I still have this article, they used me in their newspaper to get donations for their agency. Look at this kid in our agency. She's done so good after being bounced around so well. Let's donate to her cause. Of course, I don't get any of the money, but I was like a poster child for foster care.
And did you have any teachers in school that supported you or helped you out at all?
I mean, I went to so many different schools. It was ridiculous. My
Right.
last school, I was in the same, I was in my high school for the last year. And there was one teacher, my creative writing teacher, that I had did some writing and she had sent it to some places. But actually, an article, I was in this creative writing class and I was in this group home that was really bad. The last one I was in, where the kids were horrible. The staff were having sex with the kids in the place. It was a really screwed up place. And actually, an article that I wrote in my writing class ended up in someone's hands that then got the place shut down.
Oh wow.
Like I wrote a story and I was so descriptive in my story that people really saw it and they used it in the court case to shut the place down.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So
Crazy. We didn't plan to talk about this at all, but if you ask, I have no filter.
no,
I'm-
well, I'm glad. Yeah, well, that's great. It's good. It's good to.
yeah.
I'm open to, talking in depth about anything. I think that what I'm getting a picture of is like there was times when you maybe didn't have food to eat and stuff like that. Like in some of the places you were at, like you maybe were struggling to get a meal sometimes, or was it a bit better than that?
Yeah, I mean, there's times where like I didn't have food or the food access that I had was really unhealthy or they were trying to force me to eat. Like I told you, I was a vegetarian since I was a kid. So they
Right.
would try to make me eat different things, but then basically I would turn around and tell them like I had allergies, like, oh, I am lactose intolerant, oh, I'm allergic to fish. And that got me out of eating a lot of different things. So I was
Right.
really, really happy for that. But I didn't eat healthy growing up at all. I mean, I lived on like potatoes. Right, you know.
Sure. Sure.
I mean,
Well,
potatoes are healthy, but I lived on a lot of junk food,
right.
candy
Yeah.
bars.
Yeah. So transitioning into like adulthood, how did that all work out? Like, how did you start to get your life together?
I mean, I went to college and I was amazing in college. I had one time, I was still partying, I was doing drugs. I was actually selling drugs. I got in trouble. I dropped out of college for about a year. I went and worked somewhere else at a car dealership selling, not cars, sorry, selling cars. And then I was also selling drugs and it was really funny. I screwed up a lot. Basically, I screwed up a lot. I made a lot of mistakes, but I always kept going back to school and furthering my education. And because I was such an amazing student, that even in my court cases for my arrest, they bragged about me in it and about how it would ruin my life if they put me in jail and I got out of all of it. So I was always like this poster child. I got really lucky. But yeah, eventually, I kept partying. I graduated from college early at 20 years old. I had a bachelor's degree. And then I went to take a year off and I didn't go back. I actually started bartending and doing different things and making like, I was making like $10,000 a month, just bartending or selling cars or whatever. And I think what shifted for me, what got me on a healthier track was I actually got pregnant when I was 24 and the guy cheated on me and I didn't keep it. And after that, I spent 21 days drunk because I couldn't cope with what I had did by
Oh
not
my
keeping
God.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really hard for me. And then I remember I was going out with a friend of mine, who was a really good friend, and he made a comment to me that night about something. And I remember I hated the way that he had said that to me, and I hated the fact that I was so intoxicated I couldn't stand up for myself. And the next day I went sober. And at the same time that I did this sobriety thing, it was really weird because actually I went vegan at the same time. I was talking to another friend. He's like, I don't want to eat any of this. And actually, it was around the same time that I went sober. I stopped having dairy and all this other stuff too. It was really weird. I don't know why I did it all at once. But either way, I planned to be sober for just from October to I had tried to kill myself the Christmas before. I was really sad. When I was 14 years old, I went to go home for Christmas and I had cried at my family party. And it was at my grandmother's house, my step grandmother's house. And my mom says, Kathleen, that was so embarrassing. I can't believe you cried. It was so awkward for me. You
Oh,
made it so weird last night.
yeah.
Imagine that. My mother said that to me,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? And after that, she says, you're not allowed to come back on Christmas Eve. You can come to Christmas on our house. So imagine me and I was like 14 or 15 years old. Oh, my drug abuse just skyrocketed. I spent every Christmas I would go to Christmas dinner with my family and see the family that I never had, that I had until I was 11 that abandoned me. And then I would go out and do drugs all night with my friends. It was actually really nice. But yeah, it was when the Christmas before I got sober, I also tried to kill myself. It was really sad for me. So I told myself I would stay sober through my birthday, which is November 14th, Thanksgiving, and then Christmas. I just wanted to be sober for that because I didn't want to kill myself. After having an abortion, doing that, I said, fine, I'm going to get sober. If I can make it through these 3 months, I can make it through anything because these are the most painful times of my life. My birthday, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. I spent it every year alone
Yeah.
because my family chose not to have me around or whatever. So I made it through that and I felt so great that I said, okay, I'm going to try 6 months. And next thing you know, I was going years sober. You know, I had a point in time where I relapsed and I partied and I hit some different lows, but it was never the same. It was more, I realized as I was partying that I was in physical pain and I was partying like, oh, smoke weed. I get a little high. I don't feel any more pain. I can dance longer. And I relapsed at a point, but then I don't know, I just got out of it. It was never
Sure.
really an issue. But I got sober again when I found out I had cancer, of course. And
Yeah.
I think that
What age was that around about that you were diagnosed with cancer? I'd also like to know
28,
28.
yeah, so I got sober when I was 25. I relapsed when I was 28 for a few months. And then I got married. I got married to someone I met partying in Las Vegas. No, I'm kidding. I did get married in Las Vegas, but I did. I got married in Las Vegas, but I met him in Chicago. We were on a road trip together visiting his family in Las Vegas. And his mother said, you can't sleep in the same bed unless you're married. So we went and got married. And I got
Wow.
married.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He proposed to me in the Grand Canyon. It was gorgeous. And then some things happened and didn't work out. And he had to flee the country. He was a troublemaker a little bit. And when he did, I got so depressed. I went on this like road trip and I just couldn't handle life at that time. So I started to go out and take weeks off of work. I was a tattoo artist. I was making like $1,000 a day. I had so much money. It was ridiculous. I started to go on road trips around the US and I would like first leave for 2 weeks and I would just go in my car and sleep in my car and drive all around and like just see everything. I didn't want to waste money on hotels. So I would just go in my car for like a week, 2 weeks and travel, go to all these national parks. It started with 2 weeks and 3 weeks. And every time I left, I felt so good. And the reason why this was so good for me is when I was driving around the country was I had never felt at so small in a place so big and seeing so many things that I would be driving and I would break down crying.
Yeah.
because I was realizing all the emotional baggage that I was releasing on these trips. And I ended up on a 6-month trip, and I had hiked every single national forest in the US. And I remember when I got, and actually this was when I went raw vegan, was accidentally on this trip because I wasn't living in a place. So I just had my cooler and my stove, and I never liked to use it because it would just be a pain. And I pretty much spent all my time hiking in nature. And I remember when I got off of this 6-month trip in nature, I basically lived in nature and camping for 6 months. And I remember the first time I walked into a building, I could hear every electrical outlet buzzing. I could hear every bit of everything because I was so unused to all the
Yeah.
noise. And
Yeah.
we don't realize how much noise pollution we're exposed to. So I
Yeah.
think that was actually the turn of my life, was when that happened, was when I got when I was, not when I wasn't diagnosed yet, but I went on this road trip. I started to unwind from all the trauma of my life.
Okay, everyone, sorry, Kat's phone just overheated there, so we had to pause for a second. So Kat, you were at the point you were telling us about going for this kind of amazing journey, hiking through the national parks, the emotional releases coming up from your past. Do you want to continue from there?
Yeah, so pretty much I started traveling, and it started just going on like a small road trip, and then like another big road trip, and then I ended up on a 6-month road trip. And like I was saying, I remember going into the house and I could hear the electrical, everything. But at the same time of doing this, I got in the best shape ever. I went raw vegan, like I said, unintentionally. I didn't mean to. I just started eating raw. I was pretty much hiking every day, sometimes anywhere from like, 20 to sometimes like 50 kilometers. Like I would go on these all day hikes, just like crazy stuff. And it was really amazing.
Yeah.
So I went on that. And when I got back from that trip, I remember that my friend saw me for the first time after months, and he's like, "You're walking so different." And I remember I had the most perfect posture, probably because I was hiking all the time, and I was in such good shape. And I remember I could just feel every part of myself. And of course, I was sober during this time. I think maybe I smoked pot, but even that, I think I had gotten rid of that finally on this trip. I went through phases up and down, and I wish I could be like, "Oh, I'm so ashamed that I did drugs," but I'm not. I could say like I went through phases, and we all went through them. And what did I learn? That I like being sober. Do I regret that I did it? No, it was part of my experience. I wouldn't be who I am if I didn't do them, And it really opened my mind to a lot of different things. So I can't shun them, but I do think that abuse is bad, and it's an escape. 100%. I was escaping, and I do think that that's bad. I think it's better to be here now, which I am. But
Let me ask you
so
something just about what you're saying there about drugs. Does it, although it's an escape from the trauma, does it, in a
for
sense,
me,
push it back, like make it last longer? Like you're just, or like, how does that work? I don't know.
I have an interesting experience with drugs. So for me, there was periods when I abused them, but for me, actually, my body was such an unsafe place growing up because of all the abuse, physically, sexually, and emotionally, that my body wasn't safe. When I did drugs was the first time that I wanted to be in my body because my body felt so good.
Right. Okay.
But for most people, while they use drugs to escape, I actually use drugs to embody myself a lot of times. Not always, obviously, there was an escape factor in there. But for me, my body wasn't safe. My body wasn't even my own body. It was what everyone had did to it. And when I was sometimes in points of different trips and different things like that, was the first time that I loved my body, and I loved the way that my body felt, and I really wanted to be in it. And what got me sober was actually I was partying, and I was in this group of parties, and we were like, I was a dancer. I do dance, not like dancing like stripper dancing, but I'm like part of a dance crew, and we would sometimes party for 24 hours and more. And I was the only one that I would go and I would get dinner and lunch and come back to the party. I'd show up with Chinese food, like who wants some, everyone's like just partying, doing drugs. I was like, y'all looking messed up, eat some food, And during this time was actually when I went through the relapse that I got sober, because I didn't like to be high because I didn't like the way my body moved. I liked to be really nice and Like I was really, people were like, when you walk in a room, it's like a shining light. People really admired me for some reason. I think because I had this glow about me, probably because of all the bullshit I went through, that I didn't care. I didn't care what was going on. I came to dance. I came to be embodied. I really loved music because it allowed me to free myself. And yeah, it was a different experience for me. But I became sober during that time because I hated when I got high that I felt out of tune with the music, and my body was like a musical instrument, and I was so
Wow.
good at dancing. I don't know how to explain it, but it was, for me, dance was my therapy. It became my therapy. I don't know, because my
Yeah.
body was never a happy place, and I loved the way I moved.
I've got a friend of mine who said that dancing changed his life and like saved his life, you know.
Yeah, 100%. I don't feel good when I'm not dancing. It's hard in Bali because right now we don't really have we're actually in hard lockdown right now.
Still?
Fuck, man, you have no idea. They try to vaccinate the 70% of the population here. So it's like a walking, ticking time bomb of vaccinated people outside. And it's a whole nother topic maybe we shouldn't talk about. But yeah, so they locked everyone down for several months. We're just now breaking the severe lockdown where we can have events and functions and stuff. But it was pretty bad. It was really bad. And yeah, so it's
I've been
hard.
amazed. Yeah, I've been amazed because I was out in Thailand at the start of the lockdown last year, and
Yeah.
just because I was actually intended on, we were going to come to Bali, and then everything shut down.
Oh,
And
if you
like,
come, let me know.
sure. And but what happened? Everything shut down, and I was looking at like the numbers and statistics, and I'm like, but no one in Thailand's getting this. Like, it's so, it's so totally not an issue in Thailand and Bali and these countries. It's like, yeah, it's a problem.
Apparently Bali was the worst. I never saw a single sick person.
Yeah, and then the beaches closed.
It's ridiculous. So I went and got tested my antibodies because I just was curious. I wanted to get an exemption. I got my freedom paper. I have an exemption. I have a COVID-19 exemption. You cannot vaccinate me. I'm unfit for it, according to this paper. And when I went to go do this, I wanted to get an antibody test, thinking, oh, I've been sick a little bit before. Maybe I have the antibodies. I have 0 antibodies. Apparently, I've never been exposed to it. I have no antibodies to it. I don't know, but they tested me. I don't have the antibodies, so I've never had it. And anything else was good. I was like, cool. I was like, I knew I'm strong. My friends are laughing. They're like, it's because you're so healthy and you eat so good. I was like, yeah, well, that's probably part of it. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, well, there's meant to be like a T cell immunity, so it's not necessarily the case that people need antibodies because your T cells might just deal with it, something like that. So I was at the Woodstock Fruit Festival recently, and a number of people after that tested positive for COVID, and I was around a lot of them, and I stayed with a lot of them for an entire week, and then I stayed with a friend for a week that tested positive later on. And I tested 3 times after that, and I was negative every time.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. Like, why didn't I get it as well? I don't know, but definitely not something I don't think anyone should be worried about it if they're kind of relatively looking after themselves and stuff.
I was thinking it'd be kind of cool. Be like, yeah, I had it,
yeah, for sure.
It's not cool. I mean, I shouldn't say that because people are, dying from this, but I think I was just more shocked that supposedly Bali has the highest rates, in the world. They were saying besides the US, they were like, Bali's so high per person. And I don't have it.
I can't believe that Bali would have been high, because I remember looking at what was going on in Thailand and just thinking, why is the country shutting down for this when it's
there's some things I would like to share, but I don't know how far this podcast will make it. But for example, here in Bali, it's really expensive for a funeral. So the hospitals were paying the families 5 million to declare the death as a COVID death.
Right. Yeah.
And 5 million rupiah is a lot of money here and things. So there's a lot of families that came forward here admitting that the hospital wanted to diagnose the cancer death, the long-term heart disease death as COVID, even though it clearly was not. And the families were receiving the money saying, listen, we'll give you a settlement. It's part of the funds from this. The government gave us money. And right before this lockdown that we just had, the president had gotten a huge loan of money And then all of a sudden we got all these, we had like military here, militia, whatever it's called,
Yeah.
like all the military in the street. And we're thinking like, this is Indonesia, where do they have money to fund this? And because they have received special funding, and when they receive that special funding, next thing you know, everyone's getting locked down. We have military
Right.
checkpoints where I can't drive down the street without a vaccine card.
Oh my God.
Not kidding, not even kidding. I was like freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, you're kidding me, because I'm not going to inject myself with something like that. And they were requiring it. Even now, if I wanted to go to another island, they require a vaccine. If you want to fly out of the country, they've made it now where they say you don't. If you want to renew your visa here, or you want to fly in, you need a vaccine or you need an exemption. So I finally saw a doctor and I was like, listen, I have these issues going on. I have a history of this. I'm not fit to get it. And they wrote me my exemption letter. So now I don't have this burden of worry of having to be forced to take it. But I was scared out of my mind thinking I was going to be forced to have a vaccine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And here they were literally pulling people over. Oh, you don't have a vaccine? Here's a tent with a doctor inside and they give it to you. I'm not even kidding. People were getting roadside vaccinations here in Indonesia.
So crazy.
Like, it's crazy. Yeah, it was so crazy. They were like, and same thing, like if you're not wearing a mask here, they fine you. They were deporting people for not having a mask on, deportation for not wearing a mask.
But you're right. I mean, how do they afford it when I'm sure that tourism's like a huge part of Bali's economy, and like,
yeah,
no one can go in at the moment, right?
Yeah, it's so crazy. Well, now they just open it up where you can get a visa, but for a long time it was closed. Now it's just recently opened.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Well, let's
Yeah.
get back to your story from the past, I guess. So it's interesting because what you're saying is you brought up a vegetarian, you actually went vegan in your 20s, but you still got diagnosed with thyroid cancer at like 28 years old.
Of course.
So let me ask, up to the diagnosis, did you feel like something was going wrong, like something was up with your health? Did you have a clear idea? Because I feel like a lot of people have cancer for years and don't realize it, you know?
No, I knew because when I was on this trip, actually, I knew something was wrong. I was losing so much weight, more than I should. And I remember I'm an intuitive, so I do a medical scan. So I can, I have a gift, I think, because growing up, I went through so much, I developed a higher intuition or gifted abilities, you know?
Yeah.
Just I can sense things due to my childhood trauma. And I remember I was doing a meditation one day and I was doing a body scan, and there's this thing you go where you go through all your body and you say, how does this part of my body feel? How does this part of my body feel? And when I do this, I can do this on other people. I can do it on myself. I just sense an area and I get sometimes pictures, images, whatever, some sort of bounce back. Yeah. And when I got to my throat, I saw these different things. And all of a sudden I just shot up. I said, oh my God, I have cancer. And I was wondering, because at the time my voice was changing. And at this time I was just losing so much weight and I couldn't keep it in. I could eat anything in the whole world and I could not keep weight on. I could not. I was so skinny. I was maybe 55 kilos. I'm about 63 now. I'm like healthy looking, good shape. Mm-hmm. I finally got my abs back, but I was 55, which is 8 kilos less, which is a lot for me. I don't know. It's probably different in the weight system you use, but I was really skinny basically.
Yeah.
And I had said, I need to go to the doctor and I need them to scan me. So I was getting a scan first. I went to the doctor for something else. And I said, listen, I know I'm not here for this, but my voice has been changing. I feel like there's something in my throat. Could you just do me a favor and do a scan? Because I had this vision. I really knew that it was there. And they did the scan and sure enough, it was there. So when they gave me the diagnosis, of course, they said, okay, go for a biopsy. So I say, okay, I go for a biopsy. I do the biopsy. Okay, it's cancer. They tell you right there in the office, they have a person do the test and check the cells and tell you how they look. And they told me within 5 minutes of the biopsy that it was cancer. So of course they're like, oh, you need to get it removed. So I said, okay, I'll schedule this. I walk out of the doctor's office. I was hit with so much anxiety. And at this time, after going on this 6 month trip in nature changed my life. That, to be honest, that was the most sobering and most beautiful experience because I had finally spent so much time away from my childhood trauma, my place of trauma. And I had finally released so much that I knew my own energy. I knew so much about myself. I became so spiritually awakened, so in tune with my own energy, that I had this very strong sense and connection to myself and to my soul. And when I walked out, I had so much anxiety. And the first thing I said, if this was what I was supposed to do, my heart would not be beating like this. So whenever you're questioning something, the one thing you ask yourself is you go to your heart and you ask yourself, how are you feeling? If your heart's racing, something is wrong. You know, and my heart was pounding leaving the office.
Yeah.
And I said, and I called, as soon as I get to the car, I said, listen, I know I just made an appointment. I need to cancel it. But why? You have cancer. Because my heart and my body is telling me it's not the right decision. And I trust myself and I know myself, I'm not going to do it. And they thought I was crazy. I had doctors calling me, the doctor's office calling me like every other day for weeks. So I go on another trip. And at this time, I was becoming so weak. I had issues where my body was beginning to shut down. I remember one night I was sleeping and I felt like my heart had stopped. And it was because I had severe malnutrition, because my thyroid was overactive and my body was just pushing things out. I also had bacterial H. pylori, which is a parasite. And I had lost so much weight because of this parasite, and then the thyroid cancer. And then I was having issues with my organs functioning. My whole body was falling apart. But somehow I trusted that whatever I was going to do next, I knew that the answers would come to me. And I remember one night I was sleeping and I just shot up and I felt like my heart was like had almost stopped in my sleep. And because I was so weak, you know, it was really weird. And I was like hearing things at this part. I became delusional because I remember I was like hearing things and it was really screwed up. I found out a lot of these symptoms were from parasites and different things. But needless to say, it was getting winter in Chicago. And I said, I can't live here. I'm going to die if I stay in the winter. So I said, I got to go south. I'm going back to where I felt healed again. So I went down to the Grand Canyon. I got in my car. At first, I went to go see some friends. I met some people in California, and they said, listen, when I found out I was diagnosed with cancer, I called them. I said, they're like, come to Oregon. So my first thing, I said, listen, my friends are going to be here. I'm going to go to Oregon. So I went to Oregon first, but it was freezing there. I said, listen, it's too cold here. My body's shutting down. I can't be in the cold. It's not good for me. So I went back down to the south. I ended up in Sedona. By the time I got to Sedona, I was like suicidal. And I had never felt my body fail me so hard, because I went from this athlete, this dancer, this person who can dance 24-hour parties sober, just pure goddess warrior build. I was so in such sexy, amazing shape, to this person that I remember going to the back of my seat and trying to lift up a box to grab something. And I couldn't even lift it. I was so weak from the cancer. It was really sad. And I remember I made a video and a message, and I actually sent it to my mother and to my aunt. And I told them I was going to Sedona to actually kill myself. I was like convinced. I said, I can't live life like this. I can't do this anymore. I'm so tired of life. I'm so tired of doing this alone. I had cancer. I had no family I could call. Everyone had abandoned me my whole life. I had no friends. I had no nothing. Where was I going to go? You know, I have no family. My family abandoned me as a child. I have no friends. They're all drug addicts.
Yeah.
Or they're people that are unstable.
Yeah.
Where am I going to go? I was weak. I was alone. I was sick. I couldn't handle it. And I became really suicidal. I made this video and this call, and I said, listen, I'm not doing this. I actually still have the video on my phone that I made. I recorded myself because I was doing a lot of selfies, cameras while I was driving during this time, during my healing journey of this like year that I was traveling. And I said, listen, I'm not killing myself because I want to die. I'm killing myself because I'm tired of doing it alone. I'm tired of fighting. My body's failing me, and this life isn't worth living if this is my circumstance. I can't do this. And so I went to Sedona. I just said, I'm just going to go here. I'm going to figure out how I'm going to do this. I just know that I need to go here. So I was also playing around on Tinder at the time. Why am I suicidal on Tinder? I don't know. But I remember on this road trip, I was just trying to connect with people for friends while I was traveling. I met this one person, and I don't know, I somehow ended up hanging out with this person the next day after my suicide drive and phone call, convinced that I was never going to want to wake up again. And I hung out with this person, and I was like just falling apart at this time. And I told him, I don't know why I hung out with this person and why my circumstance, what it was, but I told him everything was going on with them. And this person kind of helped me for a little while. And I don't know how to explain. I went through this shift when I was there, when I went from almost I was going to kill myself to waking up, and I landed in Sedona. I don't know how to explain it, but there's something magical about this place in the US called Sedona. It's like a vortex, and I don't really know what it was, but somehow when I ended up there, all of a sudden, all these different people somehow came into my life at the time when I was really just going to die. And over a few periods a month, I started to meet these different people that gave me these different tools, like, oh, try fruitarian, try this, try that. I don't know. I started listening to these binaurals, and I was just around enough people this time that every time I felt really low, some person else got interjected into my life, just saved me. And to keep me going a little bit longer, a day more. And all of a sudden, I started to get stronger. I don't know what it was, like a mix of me eating and a mix of the people I was around. I started going to kirtan because in Sedona, there's this group, the kirtan, they give you nice Indian food. It's usually vegan. I was so cool, whatever. I didn't really like it. A lot of cooked stuff, but it was still yummy. And I started doing these mantras, and out of nowhere, I was like, I want to go to India. It was really funny. But either way, so I ended up in this Sedona place. I met a lot of different people. They influenced me to want to live again. I met these fruitarian people. This guy had terminal cancer. He was fruitarian. He's probably someone, I wish I knew who these people were, because I guarantee that they're probably in the same circle as us. Because how many fruitarian are there in the world, And I wish I could remember who this person was. They were terminally ill, hooked up to a bag, and fruitarian. It was him and his wife.
Oh, wow.
I cannot remember for the life of me who these people were, but that was my first time hearing about fruitarianism. At the time, it didn't click. I was like, okay, that's weird. I'm vegan. That's weird,
Yeah.
And so during this time when I started to regain my strength, I was like, I want to travel. So I decided that I was going to go to India. And I said, the cure for me is not in the US. It's just not here. They want to treat me, diagnose me, give me medication. I'm going to go to India. So I went back to my home city, Chicago. I went to go pack my stuff to go to India. I'm going to kirtan there. And all the Indian people are like, don't go to India. It's so scary. And this scared the shit out of me. So I said, oh my God, the Indians are telling me not to go to India. So I didn't go to India. I ended up in Peru. So I go to Peru, and everyone's there just like, drink ayahuasca. I was like, listen, man, I've done too many drugs. I don't want to do any drugs. I want to be sober. Okay. I got cancer. I'm trying to be sober. I'm trying to do this sober. Now I wish I would have drank the ayahuasca. It probably would have helped me. But at the time I wasn't ready for it. They were telling me try all these different herbs. So I spent like 6 months in South America, in Peru, Bolivia, Chile, Argentina, Ecuador, Colombia, just a few months here. I was couch surfing at the time. It was amazing. I traveled saw so many things, but the treatment there was do ayahuasca, do whatever. I didn't want to do it. Still this time doing my veganism. Everyone thought I was weird. South America vegan, they don't even know. You just eat a lot of fruit basically. So I couldn't find the answers I wanted in South America. I ended up going back to Chicago, feeling great. I was so strong at this time because I had got on all these different herbs, all the different vitamins. I had started to regain my strength. I did all these detoxes for parasites, which my body stopped getting malnutrition. My organs started to function again. And then I said, screw it, I'm going to India. India was the first place. I took the flight to India, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing there. I cried on the flight there. I had no idea why I cried. I was flying to India, and I just broke down crying. I'm like having these chats with these Indian people, and I felt like I was going home for the first time. I don't know why, but when I went on the plane to India, I cried my eyes out. Mm-hmm. And to this day, I don't understand why. And when I landed in India, it was the first time I ever felt understood. And maybe because of this time, I was going through spiritual enlightenment. I was learning about chakras, and I felt like the people there understood my language more, mm-hmm. Yoga and different things like that. So I ended up somehow meeting this guy, and he told me about this cancer doctor that treats cancer patients for free in India, holistically, Ayurveda. So there's a place in India, in Kerala, this place called Ayurveda Sala in Kodakal. They treat cancer patients for free. So I went to this place, I got the medic, and they say, listen, show me your cancer paperwork. They give you free medication for cancer, all Ayurvedic. all Ayurvedic. The only thing that they gave me that I didn't want to take, but I ended up taking anyways at this time, was ghee and honey. That was part of the treatment. And they were giving me all this different stuff, and they explained it, and they said, just do a spoonful. I said, okay, I'll try it. That was the only thing I have to admit I did do when I had cancer, was the ghee and honey. And yeah, I ended up in a place called Oroville in India. I got the cancer medicine. I headed to Oroville. Next thing you know, I'm in South India, and Oroville is called the City of Gold. It's like this, it's a special, I don't know, people that may watch this may know what Oroville is, but I ended up in Oroville. Oroville is a very sacred place. And there's like this temple that you go there, and it's like a meditation room. It's all white. And I would go there every day, and I basically would meditate. And I got into this thing where I would wake up every day at 3:30. I would do like prana yoga, like just breathing. I started doing yoga. I basically was living, I don't know, I went raw vegan at the same time, like completely raw vegan. I was doing Ayurvedic medicine. I read this different book. And at the same time of being raw vegan, doing Ayurveda, I read this book called The Mind of the Cells. And in this book, it's called The Mind of the Cells. And it basically taught me that every time you experience something, you teach your body that that's the way it needs to react. So if every day I'm taking medicine, I'm telling my body that it's not strong enough.
Right.
Every time that I'm doing something that it basically was how you do things and live your life and what it's communicating to your cells. And every day I would start the day as, I'm healthy, I'm happy, my cells are alive, I'm renewed. And I started these different mantras, because this book pretty much said, like, all your life, every day you were at home from school, your dad walked in and slammed the door. Every time you hear a door slam, you're going to relive that moment. So when I read this book, I realized that every bit of trauma I went through, I was reliving trauma in every moment of my life.
Yeah.
So I realized how every single one of my cells were reacting to trauma every moment of my life with no trauma present.
Wow. Yeah.
So I went through this deep detox of physical trauma, emotional, whatever. I started to do fasting at this time. I met a guy who was raw vegan, had cancer, also beat it. And he taught me a lot of things. And I did the raw vegan. I was fasting. I would basically, when I got into raw veganism, I got into fasting, and I got into dry fasting. And I started to alternate this along with Ayurvedic medicine. And at this time, that's how I beat my cancer. I was living in this place called Oroville. I adopted a routine where every day I would wake up at 3:30, do breathing, do yoga. I was living like a nun. 4:30, I would watch the sunrise, do my breath work. I would start to walk as the sun began to rise around 5:30, do all these stretching, yoga, get back by 7:30, then go to this temple and pray, like this meditation room. And I would sit there in this meditation position, read my book all day, eat 1 or 2 meals a day, raw vegan. Sometimes I would fast, and I would pretty much live this very, not everyone could beat cancer the way I beat cancer, because
Sure.
the way that I beat it was very strict, but not strict on purpose. I was doing a routine of fasting, eating raw vegan, and I was also reading this book that changed my life. I was doing the inner work and the physical work. So a lot of times when people have cancer, it's physical and emotional. And I was allowing myself to process both aspects of that at the same time. So I really had an interesting journey, but my journey of beating cancer started when I went on that hiking trip for 6 months and living. And then when I really started to release all the trauma from my childhood. My cancer 100% was the trauma from my childhood. And the more I fully embody myself, and I felt like my body was a safe place sober, and the more that I ate healthy, and I used, diet is only one aspect of curing cancer.
Mm-hmm.
You can give someone all the medicine in the world. You can send them on a fasting trip for a year, but if their mind is toxic, their body was still toxic. So it's like the way that I beat cancer was a accumulation of my mindset, my willingness to release my past, my understanding of like my body, and my wanting to be in my body. Because cancer comes when you don't want to be there, then it ends up there because that part of yourself dies, because you abandon your body for so long that part of your body dies. So when I started to fully embody myself again, I started to eat correct, to detox. I started to fast to allow the body to self-generate itself. And I started to really purify my mind and my soul. It was really interesting because even at this time, I remember a woman met me and she goes, "You don't have a period, do you?" I go, "No, I don't." And she goes, "You look so angelic," because being the raw vegan, I lost my period, but also too, because I had no thoughts of sex. I was like an angel. I was really just on this meditation of this eat, pray, a selfless journey of everything. It was really a purifying period for me. And it was interesting because people could see it. They said, you're very like, even the way I moved, I'm very sloppy now, I'll tell you that. Because you spend 9 years raw. At a point you give up and you're just like, this is really intense. I just want to be normal again and not have to think about my diet. It's hard. To be honest, I beat cancer going raw, and I beat cancer doing a lot of fasting, but I also developed the eating disorder.
Oh, really? Because it sounds like when you were saying you lost your period and your sex drive, but maybe you were at a very low weight at the time. But that makes sense with all the fasting you were doing and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And actually, well, I ended up developing the eating disorder because I had gotten such amazing shape that I was afraid. I didn't develop an eating disorder because I wanted to be skinny. I developed it because I learned so much about food that I thought everything was toxic and I was afraid to eat it.
Right.
God forbid I ate something cooked. I developed an eating disorder because of that. So I want to advise to other people, if they're trying to be raw or fruitarian, to not label themselves, because as soon as you put a label on yourself, then you begin to live up to the status of this is, I'm raw. Like, I don't know if you know, like raw transition diet, Damien.
Yeah.
Damien's like a good friend, my Polish brother. He was here in Bali with us for a long time. And me and him shared a lot of talks also with Fabio. And we shared a lot about how raw veganism and fruitarianism a lot of times leads to eating disorders. They had the same thing I did. We would eat a cooked meal or whatever, and I would end up throwing up because I felt so much guilt over that, not over the fact of being fat, but over eating food that I learned was toxic. So yeah, this was at the time when I beat all my stuff. I went, I got my scan. I found out I didn't have cancer. It had shrunk over a period of 6 months, smaller and smaller and smaller. My last 3 months, I spent most of the time fasting. I ate maybe 12 days a month.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you went back and got the test and everything was clear?
Yeah. Well, I got it to a point where it was so small, it didn't matter, that I didn't want to go back and keep checking. But it was like, went from huge to nothing. And at that point I said, listen, I know what I need to know. I don't want to go in there, because every time I went in there, they were trying to convince me to do medical treatment.
Yeah.
I was just over it. I said, I don't need any of this, So yeah, I did.
How long ago was that?
2018.
Wow, so that's quite a while ago now. Let me ask you, we've not actually talked about thyroid cancer much. Like, did you research it much? Do you know much about it? Is it something that, is it a very serious cancer? Is it one that people can typically?
It depends, because your thyroids are connected to your lymph nodes. So if the cancer spreads, it goes to your lymph nodes. So it goes from stage 2 to 4 immediately. So I had stage 2. So I was at a border point of where I was playing with fire, but I intuitively trusted myself. So if people are sick, they need to trust and have a good relationship with themselves. Like, you have to love yourself. You have to have that connection with yourself. Well, and from that,
it's amazing what you were saying, that you kind of caught it because you had an intuition that something was going wrong in that area, and that you actually brought it up to them. And that's probably something a lot of people probably get caught a lot later as well.
Yeah, that's the thing. A lot of people get it and they don't realize it, but that's also because they're so out of tune with themselves. It's so important to fully embody yourself at all points in time. It's so important. It's like, I think that was the most important thing I learned through all this, is that you really have to stay in tune with yourself. That's about anything in life in general, eating, whatever, dieting. Nothing matters except for the connection you have with yourself. Yeah. It's literally the most important thing.
And so you were at the Canada Fruitfest 2019. Was that like the first time you were around a lot of other raw vegan people, or?
Oh yeah, I was pregnant then.
Yeah, sure, that's right. Yeah.
I was pregnant then. Yeah, I tried fruitarianism during my pregnancy, and I would have to say that I don't advise it. Yeah, it's really interesting.
So and it's after this, when you got better and everything,
Yeah.
what's your lifestyle been like since then? Did you stick to a raw diet or back and forth, or if you said
Yeah, I mean,
fruitarian, you tried
I
for a
was
while?
raw for 9 years. And to be honest, I'm not going to say I'm 100% raw, because I'm not, but it's because I find that being that way becomes an eating disorder for me. I don't know how to explain it, but there's no one set way to eat, and no food is toxic. We've eaten it all our life. We can have a little bit of cooked food, we can have a little bit of whatever, but there's things I don't eat. Like, I eat 99% raw. But if I want to have some quinoa, I don't go crazy that I'm going to have quinoa, you know? And before, up until my pregnancy, I was still suffering from this eating disorder. And then when I was pregnant, I realized, like, I can't throw up if I eat something cooked, because I have a baby inside
Yeah,
me.
sure.
And then after giving up, I went through a period after giving birth that I stopped being raw, and I was just eating cooked and whatever. And then I started to get fat. No, I'm kidding. I was so stressed. I did gain weight after I did gain weight after stopping raw. And then I just went back to being raw. I started to not feel good. I started to have less energy. My mood, I became like cranky all the time. I was like, what the fuck is wrong with me? I said, why am I feeling like this? And I realized that all the things I was feeling, I didn't like the way I was feeling. So I went back to being raw. And then I tried to be strict raw again, and that didn't work either. So now I'm in this space of in between, where I pretty much eat raw all the time, but I sometimes want something that's not raw. Like, I want some, like cauliflower curry. I love Indian food, so I have cauliflower curry, or I eat something that's like cooked, and I don't feel bad about it now.
Sure, of course.
And I realized that when I do that, it's a lot easier for me emotionally. And I don't know, I think it's okay. But there's things I would never eat cooked again. Like, I would never eat fried food. I would never eat breads and pastas, because there's no nutritional value of it. Will I eat steamed vegetables? Hell yeah, steamed vegetables are amazing, Will I eat something that's like lightly sauteed? Hell yeah, that's good, But the thing that it taught me is eating all these different ways is that optimally, with no doubt about it, is close to raw, or raw is the best way to eat. There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt that being raw is prime, but being raw and allowing yourself, because there's days that my body wants something warm, and I honor that, because Ayurveda is older than anything. And even in Ayurveda, there's like things that they say is like, all the time cold doesn't work for everybody. And sometimes you don't have access to the right fruit or whatever. And because of that, I strongly believe that you do what you can, the best that you can, but don't go crazy over it,
So,
yeah.
why did you move out to Bali? How did that happen?
I wanted durian. I'm
Had you,
not kidding.
had you
Because
tried it
all
in
the
the US?
yeah, I had, all the fruitarians were here, and I was like, I want to go see all these other fruitarians, so I was fruitarian at the time, and I just wanted to be around other people like me. So I came to Bali, and I met all the other fruitarians. We were doing all our fruit lucks and stuff. It was really good. And even after I gave my birth, we were having all the fruit gatherings and stuff. But the thing that I noticed, like I said, along the fruitarian people, is that there's a lot of people with eating disorders that are not diagnosed. And I think that that's one thing that we need to shed light on in the community, is that there's a lot of people that are developing eating disorders in this community of raw vegans and fruitarians. And I think that there should really be like more self-acceptance in the group of themselves. It's very interesting. That's the one thing I noticed in the group, is that so many people are like, I got so tired of being in this fruit circle that every time someone would eat, oh my God, I can't believe I ate something cooked the other day. Like, dear Jesus, the whole world's going to stop, It was like a huge deal. Like, oh my God, you're drinking coffee. That's like pouring. It was really hard, And I realized that it's such a beautiful thing to eat this way, but I realized that it also, there's a lot of sides of it that are underexposed, that I think that people really need to be more gentle with themselves and others about. I don't know how to explain it, but there's like this beautiful side, but and I love it. There's no doubt about it, but there's like this little thing that is really should be some awareness to in the community.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
I tend to find that I would imagine that if I go to an eating disorder clinic, that the majority of people there come from a cooked food background. And so I'm not
Yeah.
really convinced that it's the raw food that causes eating disorders. But
Yeah.
there's definitely people with eating disorders that are in
Raw.
the raw vegan community, or are trying it out, or are hiding their issues. And you're talking about fasting as well. It's very easy for someone
Oh
to
my
say, I'm
God.
fasting, I'm detoxing, and they're really just like avoiding food.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you're absolutely right. It's funny because I pretty much stick to 100% raw as much as I can all the time, and like I really love that. And I feel like when I find groups of people, it's very rare that there's anyone that's really that strict. Like you're talking, like I always feel like I'm the strictest in the group, and like everyone else is like
That's how I was
opposite,
too.
right? So like,
Yeah.
and it's not really. I get it. Like it's a funny thing because for me, I'm strict on myself. I don't try and be strict on like other people. Like
Yeah.
that's their own
Here
business.
that was hard. It was like a lot of judgment in the group.
Yeah, I think that's. I feel like people are like that when they're kind of starting off and they get really enthusiastic and they're like new to it, and then they start to be really
Yeah.
militant about it. And then when you've been doing it for years and years, it's like you kind of realize like humans
Exactly.
are like, it takes
Yeah.
time for people to change, and it's really,
Yeah.
whatever. But
That's how I feel. I was 9 years like strict raw, and now it's like now I allow myself the freedom of like if I want to have something steamed, I go for it. But it took me 9 years of being able to be okay with myself to do that, you know? And I don't know. Yeah, I completely agree. It's not the raw that's causing the eating disorders, but there are a lot of people that have it, that hide it in the group. And it's hard because they're very it became actually where now I'm not really hanging out with anybody from the group anymore.
yeah, I
It became
understand.
too
Yeah,
hard. Yeah, it became like just really difficult. I actually missed I missed like Damien and Fabio so much because they were at the same level. I really miss my homies because I felt like they understood.
I understand. Yeah.
They're
Well, um,
super cool guys.
so your life right now, how are things going for you health-wise and everything? And
Amazing.
you, if you want to talk about anything else, your lifestyle at the moment and how you live and what
No,
kind of
amazing.
fruit you're eating.
I'm actually like maybe 90% fruit, almost nine. I'm actually still pretty much fruit based. I actually don't like vegetables, but every now and then I have vegetables, but I eat mostly fruits, nuts, and seeds.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much my diet now. And it's not because I have any beliefs about them or I think about them. It's just what feels good. Like I wake up in the morning, I have smoothie with chia and like pumpkin seeds, and I eat peanut butter. Some people have bad thoughts about peanut butter. I don't care. I love peanut butter. And yeah, I eat that every single day, like smoothie bowl. And then for lunchtime, I usually have like juice or dates or more smoothie. I can live on a smoothie bowl all day long. And also I have my nanny. She helps me because I'm a single mom. I always have like cut fruit. And then sometimes, like I said, for dinner, I eat more fruit, or sometimes I have a salad, but I also sometimes, like I said, have veggies or quinoa or something, but it's really rare.
How do you feed your uh your child?
Water.
Yeah, daughter.
My
Sorry. Yeah.
daughter has a smoothie every morning, and she eats nuts and seeds and energy balls and dates. And we
She
eat,
vegan?
she has steamed veggies.
Right. Right. Yeah.
She what?
She vegan? I was saying.
Oh, hell yeah, she's vegan. I ain't gonna poison my child. Oh, there's no. If someone is see, there's a difference. There's a lot of vegans who are vegan for their health. I'm not vegan for my health. I'm vegan for the animals because of what I witnessed as a child.
Right. Right.
So that's the thing, is like there's no doubt about it for me. I don't think anyone's vegan until they're vegan for the animals. Once you're vegan for the animals, you're vegan, you know?
Right. Right.
Otherwise, you as soon as your health goes bad, you blame it on your vegan diet, but it's not. It's your lack of nutrition knowledge,
And
you
what
know?
about B12, especially during pregnancy? I've heard that can be something that
I now take B12 now because actually after giving birth, I had broke 4 toes randomly at different times. My bones became really weak. So I finally now I'm on a multi B12, vegan B12 gummy. And I also take iron and K2 and D3.
So during
And
pregnancy, you weren't taking any B12, anything like that?
no, I wasn't. My kid turned out fine. I didn't take anything during that time. It was after pregnancy because my daughter's breastfeeding a lot
That's
that
right.
that I noticed that my bones became weak, and also too I think because of stress, and I wasn't eating enough
Right,
after I gave birth.
right.
And now I eat a lot. I eat a lot.
Yeah.
And I started to lose so much weight actually when I started to eat more, because I was eating some cooked food, and oh my God, that causes so much malnutrition. My hair started falling out. I was just like, had no energy. My skin was looking awful.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, so then I had like a 2-month period. I went back to cooked after I was like 5 months postpartum, and I just tried it, and then it didn't work out for me. So then I went back to now just eating raw. I started to get fat, and I was like, well, I was like, what's going on?
So Kat, how can people kind of follow you and maybe get in touch with you if they'd like, or find out about your jewelry also? We've not really talked about that, but where can people like learn more about you?
Okay, so if anybody wants to learn about me, I have my page Soulfully Kat on Instagram, and I share a lot about food and different things like that. Not so much anymore, but I still do have a lot of information on the page. I also am on Facebook, and you can be my friend, Kat Brodycz. And then for my jewelry, which I'm on every single day, and I share tons of photos of Bali, and it's a really cool page to follow. I actually donate a percentage of my sales also to the local communities. I actually fund food projects here because they don't have healthy food here for the locals sometimes. So I go and I do vegetable and fruit deliveries and things like that to the local community, because a lot of them are living on just rice and meat and things like that. But I donate a percentage of my sales to that. And I also fund the women's clinics here.
That's amazing.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, I've had a really crazy life. I went through really crazy stuff. And to be honest, right now, I live my life. I'm so happy with myself. I love my life. I do
Yeah.
great things. I help a lot of people. And
It's funny
I mean,
because
I
you're
live in
talking
Bali.
about, it seems like you were successful with like selling cars, with the tattoo thing,
I'm
and
good at saying anything.
with the
Ice
jewelry.
to
Like,
penguins.
you used to what? Sorry.
I can sell ice to penguins.
Is that something you just always been like that, or did you learn that, or?
My hustle?
Yeah.
Well, I think that when you don't have an option, I think because of me growing up in really screwed up circumstances, I became very intuitive,
Hmm.
and I never sell anything I don't believe in. And I also don't ever hurt people. Like, I would never sell somebody something to take advantage of them. I believe in it. And because I believe in it, I want to have other people have it. So I only sell things that I stand for. For example, all the jewelry I make is like Reiki.
Hmm.
So I should have talked more. I talked a lot about some really dumb stuff like me partying when I was a kid, but I should have talked a lot about my spiritual awakenings that I had, and my work as an energy healer, and my work with I'm really gifted psychically and stuff. And I infuse all that into the jewelry I make. So I make jewelry that's for specific healing abilities and different things. And even the jewelry I make is really pretty. So I wish people would go check
Let's
the
talk about
pages.
that. Let's talk about that before we finish. So,
Yeah.
what has been kind of your spiritual journey? Is that something that's been from a young age, or how did that awaken for you?
100%. I was a kid talking to ghosts when I was a kid. I remember being small. And I remember being small and understanding that there was energy around me that I couldn't see, but I could sense. My
Right.
mom has it too. My grandmother, I grew up in a house where it was really normal. So my mother was really gifted as well. I grew up with my mom playing the Ouija board. Not saying the Ouija board is real, but I grew up around that as a kid. And my mom had found out, like, for example, her best friend growing up had died. And she found out through the Ouija board. It was like, hey, Christina, I'm here. And she's like, who is this? It's like, George. What do you mean, George? George is alive. No, I died. Listed the hospital. And I remember seeing this as a kid. She calls the hospital. I have goosebumps now thinking about it. He had just passed away 3 days before.
Oh, wow.
And it communicated through, not like a Ouija board, but my mother would take the letters and write them on a paper. And then she would cut them out. And it was her and her three sisters, like spooky, like four witches, you know? And I remember them sitting at the kitchen table playing this. And they use a glass cup and would light the candle under the cup and like blow it out. My family's like a whole like little witch factory, I swear. And they would play this, and it told them that. And she called the hospital and confirmed that he had just died. And it listed everything, the funeral, listen, this is where I died and this is where I'm buried. And she called, it was correct. And I remember I was like so intuitive. My mom told me that when I was a kid, I used to sit and laugh at the corner. She said, I used to talk to angels. And I just remember all my life knowing that something else was around me that I couldn't see. And I would sometimes just hear things like, this is this, this is this. And I would ask my mom about it, and it was always true. So I kept listening to these things, or like I would just have a sixth sense that something is happening, or I don't know, it's a knowingness.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to explain it other than knowing that I have it. And like I can sense things, like I also have this really clear communication with spirits and energy, where if there's something in a house, I can get it to leave. You know, like I grew up with my mother used to go and cleanse house, like she was really good with cleansing houses and things. And I grew up in this different environment where this sixth sense, so energy is never created nor destroyed. So if you think that when you die, that's the end, your energy has to go somewhere, your soul has to go somewhere. And there's like this, so souls, or what we appear as ghosts, are just energy. It's just energy, positive or negative fields of vibrational energy. So you're just learning how to be a elementalist and shifting energy. So if you take out these words that are paranormal and you just replace it with, there's an energy that exists here that I don't like, or an energy here that feels heavy or light, and you look at everything around you as energy. Like, for example, like when I dance, even I can see light, I can see sound and color. It's like I'm in a room and the whole room is lighting up, and this is sober. This isn't on high, you know, this is just sober. I have this different, it's called synesthesia, you know, I have these different, it's really beautiful. But I also always had a heightened sixth sense of this, knowing that there's an energy that's shifting. And I think a lot of that came from maybe the way I was also raised, and some other things I was exposed to really early on.
And how did you get into the jewelry making? I
love jewelry. I love crystals. When I was traveling and I was going out west, the first reason why I went to California was I wanted to mine for crystals. That's why I went to California. I went on the road trip to go to California because I love these crystals. I want more of them. Oh, well, you can go to a mine and get them. Oh, I can go to a mine and get them. Oh, hell yeah, I'm going to the mine. I have the video of me like driving up. I was like, oh, masons. There's some masons here. Wow, I'm on, you know, it was like the most magical journey. I'm like, look at this. It says this. Oh, Shangri-La. Wow, I'm in the perfect place. It was like this whole, like, when you're on this journey and you're traveling, you're just like, this is the coolest thing ever. And like, everything's like a sign. Oh, this is another sign I'm supposed to be here. But it was really funny. I went to this mountain, I mined these crystals, I met these cool people, this geologist. I ended up working for this geologist for a little while. I was like going into mountains, like breaking down these quartz clusters, and I really firsthand digging out crystals. And I miss that. I love stones. I think stones, actually, I make a lot of videos on my Instagram about this, about how stones are basically a frequency, and sound. So color is a frequency. So purple is only purple because it's vibrating at a certain rate. So and the structure that it has, whether it's smooth or jaggedy, is also because of how fast the particles are moving. So again, I think of everything as an elementalist. If like sound, like same thing, how I know things exist is the same way I understand crystals. So something that's purple or blue is a vibrational energy, and you're trying to sync and harmonize with that.
Sure.
So, yeah, so I really love crystals because of that, because I understand the energy, and I am completely captivated by it. And they're very good healing tools, because when you put these crystals around you, even though it just looks like a rock, this rock is vibrating at a certain frequency, because one, it's a color and it's a shape, and that's all a wavelength. And the only reason why it appears solid is because that's the wavelength that our eye allows us to receive. So it's like interesting. So if you look at life is actually, everything around us is moving. It's a bunch of moving particles. So I was a biologist with a minor in chemistry and physics when I went to college. So I have this really wild side of like party, but I was really insanely intelligent. And that was my problem, is I was just bored. And I'm really scientific with it. I talk a lot about it on my Instagram. About
Inada.elements.
Yeah, Inara Elements, because Inara is my daughter's name and it means illumination. And then elements because I only use organic materials. I don't use anything that's not organic.
Very
So yeah.
cool. Well,
But
thank
yeah,
you.
it's really cool.
Thank you very much, Kat. It's been a very interesting conversation. Your
Yeah,
story's
it's
really
really
amazing.
sorry. All sorts of stuff. You might want to edit half of this out.
I'm sure a lot of people have told you should write a book, but your story is really amazing. I think a lot of people would like to hear that. So great. And everyone should go and check out Soulfully Kat on Instagram or inara.elements on Instagram for the jewelry page as well.
Yeah, the jewelry page, it's cool.
Yeah, and we thank everyone for watching and listening. Please feel free to share this on with someone you think it might help or give some positive
Also,
encouragement
too,
with. What's
yeah, and I
that?
was gonna say, also too, if people have issues, I went through a lot of issues with emotional, and I do mental health coaching. So if people, and I do this just as a service to other, if people are in an emotional rough spot, I'm here to talk. I don't want anything from it, but I grew up where I didn't have any support. And I'm here if people ever need, like, I've had a really interesting life, and because of that, I'm very understanding, and I'm able to relate to people in almost anything. So if people ever need someone to talk to, that they're going through a space where they just need someone to turn to, I'm always here, and they can feel free to contact me on Soulfully Kat. And I've seen a lot of stuff, and I like to think that I have some really good words to share, and I promise that they would leave the conversation feeling much better.
Yeah, I think that's a great service to offer.
Yeah,
Thank you
I
very
just do
much.
because it's
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
So thanks everyone for watching, and you can check this podcast out on YouTube. You can follow us there. You can go to Spotify, iTunes, listen there if you want to listen somewhere else. Love Fruit Podcast. Thank you very much for watching and listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Fruitfest.co.uk to subscribe. And yeah, thank you very much, Kat.
Yeah. Thank you.